Think about your car for a second. Chances are it's this amazing piece of global teamwork, right? Parts coming from maybe everywhere.
Absolutely. A rolling testament to global trade.
But, well, that whole intricate system, it's facing a bit of a shakeup now. These new 2025 auto tariffs. That's what we're diving into today.
It really is a pivotal moment. Government policy is hitting the factory floor, you know? It's changing how cars are made and definitely what we end up paying.
Exactly. And we've got some really interesting analysis here looking at the nuts and bolts of it all, no pun intended.
Right.
Forget the dry reports. We want to get into the real-world effects, the ripples hitting the industry, and, what it means for you if you're just trying to keep up.
Yeah, our goal here really is to demystify these tariffs, pinpoint where the biggest impacts are, and look at the strategies, how the car world is trying to, well, navigate all this.
Trying to keep it clear, basically, without drowning in jargon. Okay, so let's set the stage a bit. These auto tariffs, what exactly are we talking about? What kind of taxes are we seeing?
So the analysis points to a few key ones. The big headline is probably the 25% tariff on imported passenger cars and light trucks.
Right, so fully built cars coming in.
Exactly. That hits automakers bringing vehicles straight into the U.S. Then there's another 25% tariff, this time on essential auto parts.
Like what kind of parts?
Oh, engines, transmissions, but also, the high-tech stuff, electronics, safety systems. That one has really broad implications for the whole supply chain.
Okay.
And we also need to remember the tariffs on imported steel and aluminum are still in place. Those are like foundational material.
Oh, right. Basic building blocks. So it's layered. It hits different points. Okay, let's start big picture then. What's the sort of overarching effect on the whole auto ecosystem?
Well, the most immediate thing, and it's widespread, is cost. Higher costs. And it's not just one place. It hits everyone involved in getting that car made and to your driveway. The OEMs, the car companies themselves, their suppliers, even the local garage doing repairs.
So it's more than just, the sticker price might go up.
Oh, definitely. Look, the industry spent decades getting super efficient, right? Making huge amounts of standard parts globally to keep costs down. That's economies of scale.
Right.
Tariffs mess with that. Suddenly, certain global supply lines just aren't as cost effective. And planning long term, much, much harder with these costs jumping around.
And then there's that just-in-time model.
Yeah.
Where parts arrive almost exactly when needed. How do tariffs disrupt that?
Well, JIT, it needs smooth, predictable logistics like clockwork. Tariffs add cost uncertainty, sure, but also delays, customs checks, potential bottlenecks. It just gums up the works.
So companies might need to hold more inventory again.
They might have to. It goes against that lean model they've perfected.
And what's really interesting is even if a car company, say, has a big factory right here in the U.S., they're still feeling this, aren't they?
Absolutely. The analysis makes that clear. Even the big U.S. names, Ford, GM, they bring in tons of components from Canada, Mexico, Asia. So yeah, it's not just about foreign brands. It hits everyone.
Okay. Higher costs all around. Got it. Let's zoom in a bit. Specific types of vehicles. How about EVs? Electric vehicles are such a focus right now.
Right. And the EV sector faces, a pretty significant challenge here. The key thing is how much they rely on imported stuff.
Like batteries.
Exactly. Lithium-ion batteries, rare earth components, often coming from places like China and South Korea. That 25% tariff on those critical parts, it really hits their manufacturing costs hard.
So even Tesla, with their gigafactories in the U.S., they're not totally immune.
That's right. I mean, they've done a lot domestically, but the supply chain for raw materials for certain components, it's still global, so they're vulnerable too. It could slow things down for them, impact pricing.
And what about the smaller guys, the EV startups?
Oh, for them, it's tougher. They often have less capital, right? Tighter budgets. These extra tariff costs can be a huge barrier to just getting started, let alone scaling up.
It adds another hurdle.
A big one in an already tough market.
And at the end of the day, who mostly picks up the tab for these higher costs? It's got to be the car buyer, right?
Well, there's a very strong chance, yes. Those higher production costs often get passed on, which could mean EVs become less price competitive compared to gasoline cars.
Which could slow down the whole transition.
Exactly. It potentially hinders that wider shift to EVs and, the sustainability goals that go with it.
That's a really important point. Okay, shifting gears, literally. Let's talk luxury and performance cars. They tend to be heavily imported, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. Brands like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Porsche, Audi, They bring a lot of vehicles into the US from Europe, from Asia. So that 25% tariff on the finished car, that's a massive jump in their landed cost.
We could be talking thousands per car,
Oh
easily.
yeah, so what do? They could eat the cost.
Curse their margins.
Right. Or, more likely, they raise prices at the dealership. Now, maybe some buyers in that segment aren't super price sensitive, but big hikes people might delay or look at other options.
And that made in Germany cachet suddenly has a direct tariff cost attached.
Precisely. It forces a tough choice between price and that brand image.
Those high-end cars, they often have super specialized parts from all over.
Right.
That must add another layer of difficulty.
It does. Many are built to order unique components sourced globally. You can't just suddenly start making those specialized parts domestically overnight. It's not feasible, so it really bites into their cost structure.
Right, okay. How about a segment we maybe don't think about as much, but is critical for the economy? Commercial vehicles, trucks, vans.
Yeah, the commercial side is super sensitive to manufacturing costs. Fleet buyers think delivery companies, construction firms, they focus hard on total cost of ownership, TCO.
Makes sense.
And with key bits like chassis frames, powertrains, fuel systems, often imported, these tariffs are pushing prices up noticeably.
So companies like Ford, GM, Freightliner, they're in a tight spot.
It's a real dilemma for them. Raise prices too much, you lose deals. Absorb the costs, your profits take a hit.
And that has a knock-on effect, doesn't it, for all the businesses using those trucks and vans?
Huge knock-on effect. Higher truck costs mean higher operating costs for countless small and medium businesses. Retail, construction, delivery, you name it.
It ripples out.
It really does. It touches a big chunk of the economy and could even affect the price you pay for, well, almost anything that gets delivered.
Wow. Okay, now let's touch on something maybe less obvious, aftermarket parts. For repairs and maintenance. You mentioned they're feeling it too.
Yes, definitely. Those tariffs on components, they hit replacement parts coming from overseas, too. So your repair bills are likely going up.
So that oil filter, that replacement bumper, could cost more.
That's the likelihood. And it's not just cost. Independent repair shops might face shortages if their suppliers are disrupted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a worry that some might be tempted to use, let's say, lower quality non-OEM parts to manage costs, which could have safety or performance implications down the road.
And that just-in-time inventory idea applies to parts suppliers too.
It does. The aftermarket relies on having the right part available quickly. Longer lead times, more uncertainty from overseas suppliers. It makes it harder for your local mechanic to have what they need when they need it.
Okay, this is really touching every corner. Let's turn to a huge factor in all this, China. How big is their role in the U.S. auto supply chain?
Oh, it's substantial. And it's been growing, especially, again, in EVs and the advanced electronics. Think ECUs, the car's brain sensors, battery parts.
Right.
Now, they might not ship as many finished cars to the U.S. as, say, Japan or Mexico, but they are a critical supplier of the bits and pieces inside for both gasoline and electric cars.
So it's more about the guts of the car, the circuit boards, the cells, not always the whole vehicle.
A lot of it is, yes. We do get some assembled EVs from China, but also tons of electronics, lights, wheels, tires, motors, wire harnesses, steering systems, of vital stuff.
You mentioned a stat about EV batteries earlier.
Yeah, it's striking. Something like 7 out of 10 EVs made globally have battery components that trace back directly or indirectly to China. It just shows how embedded they are, especially in that crucial area.
And the analysis mentioned an indirect reliance too. Even parts from other countries might have Chinese roots. How's that work?
Yeah, this is really interesting. The U.S. imports, what, like $40–50 billion worth of auto parts each year from places like Thailand, South Korea, Vietnam.
Okay.
But many of the subcomponents inside those parts, they actually come from China.
Ah, so it's like layers. An imported part might itself contain imported Chinese bits.
Exactly. It's this complex web. So even if a part isn't stamped made in China, its cost and availability can still be tied back to what's happening there.
Wow. So tariffs aimed at direct Chinese imports can have these much wider ripple effects then.
That's the takeaway. It's not simple. You tug one thread and it affects the whole tapestry.
Okay, so given all that complexity, let's dig a bit deeper into how the automakers themselves and their main suppliers are really coping. We've talked cost, but what else is happening on the ground?
Well, beyond those cost hikes, and for electronics-heavy stuff like ADS, infotainment, batteries. We're talking maybe 15, 22% increases.
Hmm.
There are major logistical disruptions.
Right.
Companies that built their whole system on that smooth global JIT model, they're seeing production delays. They're having to rethink features, maybe offer different configurations on cars.
Really?
Yeah, and in some cases, we're even hearing about temporary holds on launching new models because the parts just aren't reliably there at the right cost.
That sounds like a nightmare for planning. What are they doing about finding other sources?
Well, there's definitely a scramble. You see a surge in demand for sourcing from places like Mexico, India, Eastern Europe. But that creates its own problem.
Marco.
Capacity constraints. Those places can only ramp up so fast. And longer lead times to get parts from these new or expanded suppliers, it's not like flipping a switch.
Because moving production out of a place like China, that's a huge deal, isn't it?
Oh, massive. You need huge investment for new factories. You need intense supplier audits, quality, standards, ethics. You need to retrain workforces. Plus, different countries have different rules, regulations.
Safety, emissions, all that.
All of it. It's complex, it's expensive, and it takes time. You can't just do it overnight.
And you mentioned smaller automakers are particularly vulnerable here. Why them specifically?
They just don't have the same economies of scale, usually. They can't absorb costs as easily, and they might not have the deep pockets needed to rapidly shift entire supply chains across continents. They're just more exposed.
Makes sense. And what about the big suppliers? The ones making brakes, AC systems, the tier ones?
Yeah, companies like Bosch, Magna, ZF, they're feeling serious pressure too. They're facing delays, getting their components from their suppliers, their margins are getting squeezed because their costs are up, and their customers, the car makers, are pushing back hard on price increases.
So it's pressure from both ends.
Exactly. It strains relationships, causes delays, it just cascades down the line.
Okay, so it's a cascade of challenges. But the analysis also talks about how automakers are responding strategically. What kinds of moves are we seeing?
We're seeing a few key plays. Some big names, Ford, GM, for instance, are really accelerating investments in North American manufacturing, trying to bring more production closer to home.
Right, building more capacity here or in Mexico, Canada.
Exactly. And linked to that, companies like BMW, Volkswagen, Hyundai, they're expanding their Mexican operations significantly, adjusting supply chains to use Mexico as a major hub to serve the U.S. market without hitting those tariffs.
So Mexico becomes even more important.
Definitely. And then in the EV space, you see a slightly different tactic sometimes.
Like Tesla.
Yeah, like Tesla focusing on vertical integration, building their own battery plants domestically, trying to lock down North American sources for minerals, basically trying to control more of their own supply chain.
Taking it in-house, essentially.
As much as possible, yeah, to reduce that import reliance.
And the big tier one suppliers, Bosch, Magna, those guys. What are they up to?
They're doing similar things, just one level down the chain. They're reassessing where their factories are, maybe expanding in Europe or Southeast Asia, and they're actively negotiating with new alternative suppliers in different regions to diversify their own sources.
Spreading the risk.
Exactly. And technology is playing a big part in managing all this complexity too, right?
How so?
Well, companies are leaning heavily on digital tools. Things like digital twins, virtual models of their supply chains to spot weaknesses, using AI for better demand forecasting, real-time logistics dashboards to just see where everything is.
Trying to get more visibility in a murky situation.
Pretty much. Using tech to get more efficient and agile.
It really sounds like a massive strategic rethink across the board. Now, one thing the analysis really stresses is how crucial market research has become in all this. Why is it so vital right now?
Well, with trade policy shifting, supply chains disrupted, it's incredibly volatile. Market research gives companies the data, the insights they need to make smart decisions instead of just reacting.
It helps them see around corners a bit.
Sort of, yeah. It lets them model scenarios, understand where their risks really lie, and do really detailed cost analysis, like down to the individual nut and bolt sometimes.
Okay, let's break that down. What specific kinds of research are proving most useful?
Well, first is just basic supplier mapping and risk assessment. You need to know exactly who makes what, where, and which parts are most exposed to tariffs.
Okay.
Then research helps evaluate alternative. Could we source this from India, Morocco, Vietnam? What are the real costs, the logistics, the labor situation, port access, all those practical factors, building resilience.
Right, knowing your weak spots and having backups. What about the money side?
Component cost and platform repricing analysis, that's huge. Research tracks raw material costs, component prices. It lets automakers model how tariffs will inflate the cost of building a specific car model.
So they could decide whether to raise the sticker price, maybe drop certain features.
Exactly. Or maybe even delay launching a certain trim level if the margins get too thin because of tariffs on its specific parts. Informed decisions about pricing and profitability.
And it's not just about cost, but maybe even changing the car itself.
Yes, that's another angle. Vehicle platform and BOM bill of materials optimization. Research can pinpoint which systems rely heavily on tariff hit imports.
Like wiring harnesses or something?
Could be, yeah, or at specific battery cells. Then engineers can look for substitutes. Can we get a similar wiring harness made domestically? Can we tweak the EV platform to use batteries from a different supplier in a different region? It drives redesign efforts.
You also mentioned figuring out how customers will react to price hikes.
Right. Demand forecasting and price sensitivity analysis. How much will buyers tolerate before they balk? Does it differ between, say, truck buyers and sedan buyers, or in California versus Texas? Research helps calibrate pricing, maybe adjust incentives or rebates, tweak feature packages, trying to keep buyers interested without killing profits.
And just keeping track of the rules themselves must be a job.
Oh, absolutely. Regulatory tracking and scenario planning. What if tariffs expand? What if a new trade deal happens? Research teams monitor all that, run simulations. What if this happens? Modeling the financial and operational impact. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
Wow. So market research really is like the compass and map for navigating this tariff storm.
That's a good way to put it. It provides the essential data for making smart choices in a really unpredictable time.
Okay, let's maybe wrap the main discussion with a quick fast fact
Yeah.
that kind of sums up this shift we're seeing.
Sure. Here's a key takeaway for you. Faced with that 25% tariff on many Chinese components, automakers are really doubling down on suppliers in North America, especially Mexico, but also looking seriously at places like Vietnam and India. And crucially, market research is right there, guiding those decisions on where to source, how to redesign, when to produce. It's central to their response.
Okay, so if we were to just summarize the big picture here,
Hmm.
these 2025 auto tariffs, they're clearly a major disruption, a big force reshaping the car world.
No doubt.
They're pushing up costs everywhere, really challenging those global supply chains we talked about, and, well, it seems likely they'll lead to higher prices for you, the consumer, across different types of cars.
That sums it up well. We see big impacts on EVs because of their imported tech, on luxury cars because so many are imported, on commercial vehicles where cost is king, and even on the parts and service needed to keep today's cars on the road.
But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? We're also seeing the industry really trying to adapt, finding new ways forward.
Absolutely. They're not just sitting back. They're responding proactively. We see more regional manufacturing, that push for vertical integration, especially in EVs, and this heavy reliance on data and market research to guide strategy. They're actively adapting.
And for you, listening in, just understanding these dynamics, it gives you really valuable context, doesn't it? Whether you work in the industry, or maybe you're thinking about buying a car soon, or even if you're just interested in how global trade actually affects everyday life.
Yeah, it really underscores how interconnected everything is. Policy decisions in one place can have these really tangible, far-reaching effects everywhere else, on industries, on consumers.
So as you think about all this, here's maybe a final thought to chew on. Could these auto tariffs be a sign of something bigger? Could we see more industries pulling their supply chains closer, becoming more regional? Could this fundamentally change the math of global manufacturing in the long term, well beyond just cars?
It's a fascinating question. Definitely something to watch.
Indeed. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.